You ever feel like you're just drowning in information? Like trying to drink from a fire hose?
Oh, absolutely.
You want the key stuff, right?
Ugh.
The insights that actually matter
Yeah.
without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, that's what we do here. And today we're diving deep into something really fundamental. It's acceptance.
Mm-hmm. A huge topic. It really touches, well, everything.
We've looked at some really comprehensive sources exploring acceptance. What it means, how it affects us.
That's right. It's fascinating how it weaves through history, philosophy, even how we think about AI these days.
Exactly. So our mission today, to pull out those core insights, to really understand acceptance and its impact on, well, our lives, history, you name it.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's just unpack the basics. When we say acceptance, what are we actually talking about?
Okay, so at its core, acceptance is. It's about acknowledging reality, seeing things as they are without that immediate resistance.
So acknowledging what is.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean you like it or approve of it. It's more like, okay, this is the situation right now, recognizing the state of things.
Got it. So it's not approval, it's acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And is this something universal? Does everyone experience this need to accept?
Oh, absolutely. The need to accept things, good things, bad things, limitations, other people, it's constant across genders, ages, cultures.
Everyone.
Everyone. Now, how we cope or express acceptance, that can vary a lot, But the basic psychological process, that's shared.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about a kid learning the rules of a game. They have to accept them to play. Or an adult facing a big career change, maybe unexpectedly.
Right.
Or an older person coming to terms with aging, maybe physical changes. They're all forms of acceptance. Different scales, same underlying process.
Okay. And you mentioned history. This isn't some, new self-help trend then.
Oh, definitely not. No. Acceptance is a theme that runs, way back through human history.
Like where?
Well, think ancient philosophies. Stoicism, for instance, hugely emphasized accepting what's outside our control, focusing on our response.
Okay.
Then you have Eastern traditions like Taoism or Buddhism. They talk a lot about accepting the natural flow or the reality of, say, suffering, dukkha in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Even societal shifts, Progress often depends on eventually accepting new ideas. Think about accepting that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. That took time.
Right. Or civil rights movements,
Yeah.
accepting new social reality.
Exactly. Letting go of the old paradigms, that acceptance is key to moving forward.
So building on that, how does acceptance play out on that bigger stage, like history, society?
Well, societal acceptance, or the lack of it, is a huge driver of change. We just mentioned scientific shifts, social norms.
Yeah.
When a society eventually accepts these, it can progress. But if there's major resistance to, necessary changes, that can lead to stagnation, even conflict.
And after big events, like conflicts.
Acceptance is crucial then, too. Accepting the new reality, however difficult, is often fundamental to rebuilding, to shaping what comes next for that society.
Wow. Okay, that's the macro view. Let's zoom back in. What about us? Our own bodies, our minds? Is there a link?
Oh, a very direct link, especially biologically. When we're constantly fighting things we can't change, resisting reality,
Yeah.
it triggers the body's stress response. You get that sustained release of cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly. And chronic stress, well, we know it's bad news. It impacts the immune system, heart health. It can even affect how our genes are expressed.
Really?
It's a field called epigenetics. Basically, stress and other environmental factors can flip switches on our genes, influencing which ones are active. DNA methylation is one mechanism.
Fascinating. And the flip side, acceptance.
Well, the flip side is that self-acceptance, or accepting your circumstances, things you can't change, that's strongly correlated with lower stress, better mental health, better physical health overall.
So fighting reality can literally make you sick.
In many ways, yeah. It puts a huge strain on the system. And this idea, this principle of acceptance, it's not just biological. It's central to a lot of philosophy, too.
Okay, like which ones? Give us some key examples.
Well, we mentioned Stoicism already. Big emphasis on accepting what you can't control.
Right.
Focus on your judgments, your actions, the things you can control.
Right. Epictetus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. Classic Stoic idea.
Okay. Yes.
Buddhism, as I mentioned, starts with accepting suffering, dukkha, as just part of life. then it offers ways to understand and work with it.
Mm.
And then you have something like existentialism. It often involves accepting a kind of inherent meaninglessness in the universe, but then emphasizes our freedom, our responsibility to create our own meaning within that.
It's striking how these different schools of thought from different times, different places, seem to land on this same core idea.
It really is.
Does it pop up anywhere else? Maybe somewhere less obvious, like physics, math.
That's an interesting thought. It's more of a conceptual parallel, maybe, but you could argue yes.
How so?
Well, physics progresses by accepting the observed laws of nature, right? Even when they're counterintuitive. Think about quantum mechanics. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle basically accepts there's a fundamental limit to what we can know simultaneously.
An acceptance of limits.
Kind of, yeah. Or in math, you start with axioms. These are fundamental statements you just accept. Without proof, the whole system builds on them.
Okay.
And logic itself relies on accepting premises to reach a conclusion. Even solving a basic problem requires you to accept the conditions you're given.
So this underlying principle, it seems to echo in a lot of places. What about just our, day-to-day mental state?
Oh, hugely important there. Acceptance is really key for mindfulness and emotional regulation.
How does that work?
Well, when you can observe your thoughts, your feelings, without immediately judging them or trying to push them away or grabbing onto them.
Just letting them be.
Yeah, letting them be. It reduces that emotional reactivity. It helps create a bit of inner calm. But if you lack acceptance, if you fight those feelings, that often leads to spirals of rumination, anxiety, anger. You're struggling against your own inner world.
And this isn't just internal, is it? It affects how we relate to other people, too.
Absolutely. Self-acceptance is huge for self-esteem, for being authentic.
How so?
If you can embrace yourself, flaws and all, you're less dependent on what others think. You can be more genuine.
Makes sense.
And then extending that acceptance outwards towards others, that builds empathy. It reduces judgment. It just makes for healthier, stronger relationships.
And the opposite.
Well, a really critical mindset, always judging others.
Yeah.
That often comes from a lack of acceptance, maybe of oneself or just of difference. And it creates friction, obviously.
So let's zoom out again. The wider world. How does society kind of react to or reflect this idea of acceptance?
Well, you often see that societies that are more accepting of diversity, of different viewpoints, they tend to be more inclusive. Maybe more resilient, more innovative even, because they draw on more ideas. And think about resolving conflicts. Often it requires some mutual acceptance of a new reality to actually move forward.
But it's not always good to just accept things, is it? What about injustice?
That's a crucial point. Absolutely. Acceptance isn't always the right response, ethically speaking. Passively accepting injustice can be seen as condoning it.
Right.
Sometimes resistance, pushing back, not accepting the status quo is the ethical imperative. It's a really important distinction.
This brings up a really interesting question. How humans understand acceptance versus how maybe an AI might approach it. Are they different?
Oh, massively different. Yeah. Our human understanding is just steeped in subjective experience, in emotion.
We feel it.
Exactly. We feel acceptance. It's tied up with empathy, our personal stories, our relationships. We often get the nuances through things like art or stories or philosophy, things that capture that felt complexity in ways data alone can't.
It is personal.
Hugely personal. What one person accepts easily, another might really struggle with based on their life, their background. It's subjective.
Okay, so how would an AI understand acceptance then?
Well, an AI's understanding would be built on patterns in huge data sets.
Okay.
It could analyze language, maybe look for phrases associated with acceptance, or analyze behaviors, physiological data, find correlations with reduced stress markers, perhaps.
So we could identify indicators of acceptance.
Exactly. Indicators, correlations. It might even predict situations where acceptance could be tough based on past data, or model outcomes of interventions designed to help people accept things.
But it doesn't feel it.
No. It lacks qualia, that subjective first-person experience. It can process endless information about acceptance, but it doesn't have the inner experience like a human does.
So we bring the feeling, the why, maybe, and AI brings the pattern spotting, the what correlates with what.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. The real potential here is in the synergy. How can AI augment our understanding?
How might it do that?
It could surface patterns we miss in large populations. It could power personalized tools, maybe apps that offer feedback or exercises. It could help identify societal factors that help or hinder acceptance on a bigger scale.
So a tool to expand our knowledge.
A potentially powerful tool, yes. But it doesn't replace the human stuff, the empathy, the self-reflection, the connection.
Let's shift gears a bit. Where did this whole idea of acceptance even come from? The sources suggested maybe basic survival.
That seems very plausible, yeah.
Yeah.
At the most fundamental level, early humans had to accept certain realities to survive.
Like what?
Like environmental dangers, you don't fight a blizzard, you accept its presence and seek shelter. Accepting your own physical limits. Accepting loss. These have clear survival benefits.
Makes sense.
Then, as societies got more complex, accepting social rules, hierarchies that became important for the group to function, for cohesion.
Yeah.
And then, with more self-awareness, humans started asking the big questions, right? About existence, mortality. And that led to philosophical, spiritual frameworks often built around accepting the nature of life.
And it's not like we figured it out once and that was it, right? It keeps evolving.
Oh, absolutely. Acceptance is totally dynamic. It evolves with us. Every era throws up new challenges we have to adapt to accept.
Like today.
Think about technology shifts, climate change, changing social understandings. We're constantly needing to adjust. And our understanding of acceptance deepens too through psychology, neuroscience, contemplative practices.
And now AI itself is something new to grapple with.
Exactly. AI is this whole new frontier. Understanding it, accepting its role, its potential, its risks. That's a major acceptance challenge for us right now. It's still very much in the making.
So what helps or hinders us in actually accepting something? What factors are at play?
Oh, loads of things. Personal struggles, misfortunes, these can be huge catalysts, forcing us to adapt, to grow. Or they can be massive barriers, especially if trauma is involved, shattering our sense of predictability.
Right.
Sometimes people use things like drugs or alcohol as avoidance mechanisms, right, to not face reality, temporary escape.
Sure.
On the other hand, things like seeking truth or having a strong faith system, those can really facilitate acceptance. They offer clarity or meaning or just a framework to hold difficult experiences.
And emotions, how do they fit in?
Emotions are central. Allowing yourself to feel grief, to cry, that can be part of accepting a loss. Whereas intense anger might signal, a really strong resistance to something. Laughter, too, can be a form of accepting absurdity.
What about really basic stuff like being safe, having food?
Absolutely critical. If your basic needs aren't met, safety, food, rest, it's incredibly hard to get to a place of acceptance. Your whole system is basically in survival mode, which is counter to acceptance.
And focus. Does being able to concentrate help?
Definitely. Practices that train concentration, like mindfulness, are powerful tools for acceptance. They teach you to observe your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away, without that immediate judgment or resistance.
Okay.
Even our relationship with material stuff can tie in. Sometimes chasing more and more comes from not accepting what we have. Cultivating acceptance can shift that whole perspective.
Do our lives growing up,
Yeah.
our relationships now, how do they shape this?
Oh, profoundly. Childhood experiences are huge. Feeling accepted, loved by caregivers, that builds a foundation for self-acceptance later on.
Makes sense.
And healthy relationships really depend on mutual acceptance, right? Accepting the other person, quirks and all.
Yeah.
Our job, our social status, money, these are all areas where our contentment often boils down to accepting the current reality. Even while maybe working towards change, it's not about giving up necessarily.
It's not like you just get acceptance at a certain age.
No, it's a lifelong process. We learn to accept different things at different stages. Rules as kids, career paths later, aging eventually. It's constant learning.
This whole thing feels like it has some pretty heavy ethical weight to it.
It really does. I mean, accepting the basic dignity and worth of every person, that's fundamental to ethics, isn't it?
Yeah.
And taking responsibility for what we do also means accepting our role in things. But, like we touched on before, it gets tricky with injustice.
Right, that balance again.
Exactly. Accepting that injustice exists is one thing. That should really be the starting point for action. But accepting it as, okay, condoning it, that's ethically problematic.
And AI adds another layer.
It does. We need to think carefully about the ethics of how we design AI, especially if it's interacting with human emotions and well-being around acceptance.
It seems like a lot of harmful behavior might stem from a lack of acceptance.
Very often, yes. Not accepting others' humanity, not accepting different views, maybe not accepting one's own flaws that can lead to projecting negativity, aggression.
Which raises tough questions about people who might have, say, reduced empathy.
It does. And that phrase, that's just the way it is. Sometimes it's healthy realism, accepting what can't be changed. Other times it's just passive resignation, maybe even harmful. Discerning that difference is key.
So, looking ahead, Can we get better at this, at cultivating acceptance? And could AI actually help?
I think there's potential, yes. AI could really help us understand acceptance better. Analyzing huge amounts of data might reveal factors that really promote acceptance and resilience or identify common barriers.
And use that information how?
Well, that research could then feed into developing better tools, maybe personalized apps guiding mindfulness or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, which often incorporate acceptance principles.
Right.
AI might even help, carefully and ethically, identify people who are really struggling with acceptance in ways that harm their well-being, allowing for earlier support. But the ethics there are obviously complex.
Right. It's not like AI is going to be a magic button to make everyone feel good all the time.
Exactly. That's not realistic, maybe not even desirable. The goal isn't constant bliss. It's more about potentially using AI to ease some burdens.
Like how?
Maybe reducing chronic stress with personalized tools. Helping foster connection by analyzing communication, perhaps. Offering tailored paths for growth. Things that indirectly support our ability to accept.
So what do we need to keep in mind?
Crucially, that acceptance is a skill. It takes practice. AI can be a tool, an aid, but it doesn't replace our own effort, our own inner work, or human connection. And we have to be aware of AI's limits and use it ethically, prioritizing well-being.
It makes you wonder who's really benefited most from acceptance throughout history and who might benefit in the future, maybe with AI's help.
Historically, probably those individuals who really cultivated that deep acceptance of self, others, life's realities. They likely found more peace, resilience, better relationships. Think philosophers, spiritual leaders, anyone who deeply practiced it. Looking forward, if AI can genuinely ethically help more people develop this capacity, then potentially everyone could benefit, society as a whole.
Could AI even help us accept big things, like life and death? Maybe logically.
It might offer new logical frameworks, new ways to think about mortality based on data or philosophy. But that deep, personal, emotional acceptance of our own death, that feels like it will remain a profoundly human, maybe spiritual journey.
What about humor? We touched on it briefly. It feels connected to acceptance somehow.
It really does. Humor is often about acknowledging life's absurdities, its imperfections, and reframing them, right? That's a form of acceptance.
Yeah.
Why we find different things funny is super complex, though. Culture, experience, personality. AI can analyze what people laugh at, but really getting the joke, that requires a depth of context and empathy that's still very human.
So this whole journey of acceptance, where does it lead? And why is it so different for everyone?
Well, the journey often leads towards more psychological flexibility, more resilience, maybe a kind of wisdom eventually.
And why the difference?
Because we're all so different. Our genes, our upbringing, our culture, our choices, they all shape how we approach acceptance, what we struggle with. Life itself, for us, for probably all living things, is constant adaptation. Acceptance is just a crucial strategy for navigating that reality with, hopefully, less suffering.
And AI might give us new coping strategies.
Potentially, yeah. New tools, new insights. We're also learning more about the physical side, how acceptance affects stress, health behaviors. It's all connected.
It's interesting, though, we don't always explicitly teach acceptance to kids, do we?
No, we often don't. Maybe because we struggle with it ourselves, or maybe there's a fear it means giving up. But really understanding acceptance in a nuanced way, that feels potentially transformative. It could change how we relate to ourselves, others, the world.
So bringing it all home, acceptance is this incredibly complex, deeply human thing. It touches everything from our personal well-being to how society moves forward.
Absolutely. It's woven into the fabric of experience.
And while it's so personal, so emotional, maybe AI can offer new ways to understand it, perhaps even cultivate it.
Possibly, as a tool to augment our own efforts.
But ultimately, it's not a final destination, is it? It's an ongoing process, a dance with reality?
Exactly. It's dynamic. It's how we engage with the richness, the messiness, the fullness of life.
So, a final thought for you listening. Given how much acceptance shapes our well-being, what's one small thing you could do today? Just one small step towards cultivating a bit more acceptance in your own life. Maybe just noticing, without judgment, a moment where you feel resistance. Just notice it.
Yeah, that awareness is often the first step.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope you'll continue thinking about these ideas.
This is DigitView.